Taylor Allison Swift has officially come out with her 12th studio album, The Life of a Showgirl. And as a lifelong Swiftie, yes, someone who was listening to Teardrops on My Guitar in middle school, I always look forward to new Taylor releases and entering a new era with my favorite songwriter. This album definitely had a lot of buzz and anticipation from its announcement on New Heights to its rollout and release, and I have been listening pretty consistently for the last couple of weeks to really gather my thoughts. I've taken a lot of notes along the way, and I've also done some pleasure listens. Today I'm going to walk you through all of the songs on The Life of a Showgirl. Thank God there are only 12, not 31, like Tortured Poets Department if you count the anthology. I'll share my personal favorites, my overall song rankings, and I'm also going to re-rank my favorite Taylor Swift albums, which I did a whole episode about last year, but we have to now include The Life of a Showgirl in these rankings. So go ahead and grab your favorite beverage. I have a nice chai in front of me. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see in my very cute glass, and we are going to talk Showgirl. But first, let's do a little create and consume. If you're new here, create and consume is a segment that I do where I share what I am creating and consuming each week. It's pretty self-explanatory. As far as what I've been creating, I just actually uploaded my Chicago vlog right before recording this episode. So over on my YouTube channel, I create and share tons of vlogs where I document my life. Last week, we were in Chicago for the Chicago Marathon. My husband, Andrew, is a runner, and this was his third marathon, and he actually got a new personal record, which I kind of figured he would do. Like, he really went hard with training and was very intentional about what he wanted to do, but he managed to get through some less than ideal conditions, including monitoring his heart rate and the heat and just all of the different aspects of that actual course. So he actually very kindly shared some tips and advice in that vlog. If you've been thinking about running a marathon, or specifically the Chicago Marathon, he very kindly shared his insights over in that video. So I can link it in the show notes if you're interested in watching. We also got to explore a lot of the city. I reached out to Choose Chicago and actually requested 2 city passes for our trip, which they very kindly gifted me. And with City Pass, you can see a ton of different things all within one city. We also did City Pass in Seattle when we went in 2019. It's just such a great way to see a bunch of different things, and you do get a really big discount if you do pay for the City Pass. In this case, I was gifted it, and I was able to reach out and request that because I created a lot of content from the trip. The 3 things that we used our City Pass for were to do one of the architecture boat tours on the Chicago River, to visit the Chicago Art Institute, and also to do Skydeck Chicago, which is at the top of it's now called the Willis Tower, but the Sears Tower for anyone who is familiar with iconic Chicago landmarks. So all of that is in my new vlog. And then as far as what I was consuming this past week, I somehow convinced Andrew to watch The Wrong Paris with me, which is a Netflix movie that came out recently starring Miranda Cosgrove. I think had he known the premise of this movie, he would not have agreed to it. But essentially, Miranda Cosgrove is a girl who lives in Texas. She has 2 sisters, and they were basically raised by their grandmother. And she really wants to go to art school. She applies and gets into art school in Paris, but she can't afford to go. Her sister, who is obsessed with this TV show called The Honey Pot, which is essentially The Bachelor, tells her that she should sign up for the show because the next season's going to be filmed in Paris. And she's like, well, at least I'll get the appearance fee. That'll help me pay for school. And they will fly me out to France for the show. So what ends up happening, as I'm sure you can tell from the title, I don't think this is a spoiler alert, is the show is not actually filming in Paris, as they were led to believe. The majority of the show takes place in Paris, Texas. So that is very funny. As someone who watches The Bachelor, and as you guys know, I've done episodes about reality TV on this podcast before, I just found it very interesting. And it was just like a cute, quirky, funny movie, like a little predictable. But honestly, Miranda Cosgrove, she's just such a ray of sunshine. I would watch basically anything that she does, including Drake and Josh and iCarly, which I watched as a tween, I guess, or a child, maybe a pre-tween. Tween? What do we call kids these days? Clearly, I don't know, but don't forget to let me know what you've been creating and consuming as well. All of the ways to get in touch are always linked in the show notes. With that being said, let's get into the topic of today's episode, which is the life of a showgirl. Now, I think that to start out, I want to talk about what I was expecting this album to be and what this album actually was, because when it was first announced on the New Heights podcast, I think I was just anticipating this to be an expansion of the behind the scenes of the Eras tour, like another look behind the curtain of what we got a glimpse of with I Can Do It with a Broken Heart, which is one of the tracks from the Tortured Poets department. So in my head, I was definitely thinking like backstory of a showgirl, the behind the scenes of the entertainment industry and the things you do and don't see, and a glimpse into what it kind of means to be a pop star. Because what I started out loving about Taylor Swift was how relatable a lot of the songs were. Like literally me listening to Teardrops on My Guitar in my bedroom, wondering if a boy would ever look twice at me. And that is something that was really relatable to me as a middle schooler. And there's not that much about Taylor Swift's life just at a glance that's very relatable to me or some of her OG listeners now. I do not attend every NFL game of my favorite team. If I did, I would be thoroughly depressed because my favorite team is the Giants and they keep finding spectacular ways to lose. I do not fly on a private jet. I am not a billionaire. And I'm also not one of the world's most scrutinized people. In some senses, like we got more glimpses of Taylor through recent press appearances she's done and the New Heights podcast talking about like reading sourdough blogs. Like that is the Taylor that I feel like I know and relate to a lot. So I was thinking Life of a Showgirl was going to be how to bridge the gap between this pop megastar that we know and love from afar, but also like what the relatable things are behind the scenes. And also what kind of happened to get her to that point, which I think is a topic she's alluded to a lot over the years. And obviously, the album Reputation was such a big like call and response to what everyone was saying about her and their assumptions about her. But I feel like she hasn't talked about it in this type of way yet. And I think the album also was a very heartfelt look into what it is like when you finally find your person, what it is like to be in love, to be content with who you are, and to kind of start to answer some of the questions that she has posed and been searching for the answers to over the years about love, happiness, what it all means, and how it feels when it all clicks, which is very lover coded, which was actually, if you listen to my Taylor Swift ranking episode, the album that ended up at the bottom for me. We'll get to my complete re-ranking of the albums at the end of this episode, so be sure to stick around all throughout the episode to hear that. And then the thing that this album also gave that I wasn't necessarily expecting was closing some open conversations, I think, like finding a little bit of closure, especially with track 6, which we will talk about, and also addressing some feuds and internet gossip that I think this is the last we're going to hear her speak on. For her last batch of albums, she worked pretty closely with both Jack Antonoff and Aaron Dessner, and they especially helped her with like Folklore and Evermore. So it was interesting to hear that she was going to be working on this album with Max Martin and Shellback, who are collaborators who helped her with some of her biggest hits from 1989 and Red, which I feel like are two of my personal favorite eras of Taylor Swift music. That resulted in some of my personal favorite songs of hers as well. And it's an interesting choice to kind of dive back into her collaboration with them from a few years ago and look at the comparison and the contrast of how that all came together in the life of a showgirl. By the way, I just want to say, I feel like I just got very criticky for a second. I have no background as like a music critic or anything. I was an art history major in college, so I did learn how to look at art, draw conclusions about it, and write about it. I would say like that is probably where a lot of my analysis, quote unquote, of this will come from. But I do not have like a music degree. I did theater growing up, but never pursued it professionally. So like my view on this is I'm a lifelong Swiftie. I feel like I personally have really done a deep dive on a lot of her writing and storytelling and music in the past, like truly for fun. Like this, there are no rules with this podcast. I get to decide what every episode about. This is something I am choosing to do. And I just wanted to say like that is my vibe and my take on this, because I feel like I just got very introspective right there. And I just want to reassure you that I am just a girl who loves Taylor Swift, but who also likes to have conversations about this stuff and think critically about this. So I like to hear just like the background of everything before we actually go through all of the songs. And a lot of this is my personal feelings. Again, I have no perfect scale that I'm measuring this against, except my view of Taylor, who she is as a songwriter, and her whole body of work over 15 or 16 years at this point. If you want to hear what actual music critics think about this album, I would definitely recommend listening to the Popcast episode about this album, and I will link it in the show notes. I listened to it after writing my outline, but before I sat down to record today. And I feel like one thing that they said that stood out to me that I wanted to put at the beginning of this, like their kind of overall takeaway or viewpoint on this album compared to some of her other recent albums, was everything is in its right place. It sounds expensive. Sentences end when they're supposed to. I think that's a dig to the Tortured Poets department, which they did not collectively like, the two critics who do the podcast. And they said she's really back to focusing on like specific moments and details. And I do agree that that is like a big strong suit of hers. With that context, let's go track by track here and just chat about these things. And if you guys want to see my real-time reactions to listening to all of these songs for the very first time, that is in a vlog I published, I think, a week or two ago at this point on my YouTube channel. So I can link that in the show notes as well if you want to see my face basically hearing Wood for the first time. I'm sure we will get there. Okay, track 1, The Fate of Ophelia. Now, this is track 1 of the album. It was also chosen as the single for this album. And it really does feel like a true bridge between like coming out of the Tortured Poets era and starting Life of a Showgirl. And I forget who did it on TikTok. I'm going to try to find the video to link in the show notes, but someone actually played the last few lines of the manuscript and then stitched it together with the first few lines of The Fate of Ophelia. And shout out to whoever like put 2 and 2 together like this, because I do really feel like I think about the last few lines of the manuscript before I click on The Fate of Ophelia for me on Spotify. It really does feel like a true end and then a true beginning of something new. And I feel like the only albums that we really don't get that between are Folklore and Evermore, because they're so interconnected. And I mean, visually, sonically, everything, this album feels so different in many ways from the Tortured Poets department. So I think that starting off on this note was a really clear demarcation of like, we're putting this chapter behind us. That was there, but now we're good. I read the manuscript and it doesn't feel like mine anymore, to here's where we're at right now. So even like before she says anything, just with the first few beats of the song, I love that vibe shift. I also love how with a literary reference like this, you know, with Ophelia, who is a tragic character in Hamlet, we have a certain expectation going into the song based on what we know about the fate of Ophelia. And what I love about how Taylor's songwriting brain works is that here we are talking about the fate of Ophelia, but it's flipped on its head, where she has actually been saved from the fate of Ophelia because she is in love with Travis now. And I would argue that like the first 3 songs are really just like happy odes to what it's been like to be in love for the last year and a half or however long they've been together. I also love that we got a music video for this song. The music video is so much fun, so many details, different things going on. I want to watch it through again. I actually only watched it through once right now, but I am addicted to trying to learn the little dance that has become popular on TikTok. I know it's simpler than it looks, but for some reason, it just is not computing in my head. I feel like I really need to like drill it down to actually learn the part where she says, you know, keep it 100 on the land, the sea, the sky, pledge allegiance to your hands, your team, your vibes. I can see the dance in my head. I'm sorry, I'm wiggling back and forth on YouTube if you're watching. Not a very good interpretation of it yet, but I want to learn it. And I just feel like that part is so catchy. I feel like I don't know how artists really think about TikTok in the grand scheme of things. And obviously, TikTok as we know it in a few months may cease to exist. Maybe I should do an episode talking about that next, because I feel like content creators probably have questions. But I feel like you kind of have to be thinking about short form video, even as a musician, and thinking about which pieces of your songs are actually going to end up becoming those shareable moments or becoming those short clips that someone is going to lip sync to. not to jump ahead, but in Actually Romantic, there's a lyric where she says, "Stop talking dirty to me." I've already seen probably like thousands of TikToks of people who will put like text on the screen, like, "You want to go get a nice chai and take pictures?" And then my response would be like, "Stop talking dirty to me." I wonder if I could ever interview Taylor Swift. Dream interview, by the way. I would definitely want to ask, like, does that ever cross your mind when you're writing songs, or is it stuff that occurs to you later on? Because she has historically not really leaned that much into social media marketing for her album. She hasn't really had that much of a need to. I feel like Midnights, if anything, was the time that she was really most like online with everybody else. Anyway, I just truly like this song is such a banger to me and such a perfect way to start out this album. Okay, Elizabeth Taylor is another very like high octane, catchy, stompy pop track that just like gets stuck in your head. What's the lyric from Tortured Poets where she talks about like putting narcotics in her songs? I feel like Elizabeth Taylor is one of those for me. So Elizabeth Taylor, I'm sure you're all aware, an actress and activist. She was a child star in the 1940s. She became a very popular actress in 1950s Hollywood. She also famously married many times. I do think it's a very interesting like comparison and contrast again with the story of Elizabeth Taylor and like the story of Taylor Swift. And now that she has actually gotten it right after she talks about like getting it wrong once, twice, a bunch of times when talking about like her former partners. And I feel like this is a very like low slight on the album. There are a lot more intentional digs later on in different tracks, but Under Bright Lights, They Withered Away But You Bloom, which is like a nod and a credit to Travis for being someone who is already used to the spotlight and who's very like self-confident and doesn't need to hide or conceal himself, as Taylor did in her relationship with Joe Alwyn, famously. The focus on fame and spotlight for me also reminds me of Clara Bow from the Tortured Poets Department era. In that song, she says, "You look like Clara Bow, you look like Stevie Nicks." She finally like self-references herself for the first time. "You look like Taylor Swift," and Clara Bow, kind of like a similar parallel in some ways to Elizabeth Taylor. I mean, American actress and cultural icon of the 1920s, so a few decades before Elizabeth Taylor. And Taylor Swift does love like a historical reference. We hear it in The Last Great American Dynasty, which is on Folklore. We hear it all the way back to Starlight from Red. But I always find it interesting who Taylor Swift chooses to align herself with, both like in the present and who she kind of reaches back into the past and chooses to reference as well. Okay, let's move on to Opalite, which is definitely one of the like happiest songs of Taylor Swift's that I've ever heard. A lot of like really standout lyrics in here for me. She talks about missing past loves, and I feel like that's a relatable nugget that you can pull out from this Taylor Swift song, which is like, you know, you think back on past relationships and you only remember the good stuff and you don't remember like why you guys broke up in the first place. I feel like that is something that a lot of girls can relate to, and guys and gays and all the people. And then you kind of go back to them. And then she said, "My brother called it eating out of the trash." Shout out Austen Swift, a fellow Austen. Hello. It really is a very happy bop. The only real dig in here seems to be a slight dig to Travis Kelce's ex. She says about him and her, "You were in it for real. She was in it for her phone. You were just a pose." I don't know that they've ever even met, so I'm assuming this is just anecdotally her assumption through Travis. All in all, it's not the worst dig that is made on this album. Again, we will get to it. I also liked the lyric, "You finally left the table." A lot of people on the internet have pointed out this is a reference back to "Help, I'm Still at the Restaurant," which is a lyric from Right Where You Left Me. That's a bonus track from Midnights. And I also love the line, "Failure brings you freedom." I feel like that sums up Taylor and her expectation to be in the like single era again, having tried and failed many times before, but also becoming less and less tied down by other people's opinions and being more bold and specific about what you do want and recognizing what you want when it's actually right in front of you. Okay, so I love that. Let's move on to Father Figure, which is track 4. Now, she said in an interview with Jimmy Fallon, and I love that Taylor did real press for this album again. It felt like 2015 in a good way. She said when she was on Jimmy Fallon that Logan Roy was one of the inspirations for this song. If you guys are not watchers of Succession, first of all, great backlist pick to go watch this time of year, especially too. Very like good fall winter show, I would say. Succession is essentially about a rich, wealthy family in New York City. Their dad owns this entertainment company. They do like cruises, news, media, all of the things. And there's a whole debate about like who's going to take over their father's company. And all the kids are like rich and spoiled. And it's a great show. I know it sounds very unrelatable, and it is, but definitely a fun watch. I think the first thing I thought when I heard this song was like, oh, this is very like Godfather coded. Hearing the Logan Roy reference, that makes a lot of sense. But also listening more and more, talking about like protege and all of the other like little hints that are given throughout this song, definitely feels like an allusion to just men in the music industry in general. And if you think about this song in conjunction with like Scooter Braun, and then now being on the other side, having actually reclaimed her masters and actually being in control now of all of the rights to her work, it does kind of feel like she is settling the score with some of these men of the music industry where maybe there were empty promises, or maybe she was originally the protege, and then by the end of the song the script is totally flipped and you realize that she's in control. This also, like the idea of protege and mentor and all of that stuff, that feels very on theme to me of the life of a showgirl. And every showgirl kind of needs someone to pull themselves up, but at a certain point they probably realize that they have more control than they think, that they can be the ones in power and they can be the ones who are in control of what does and doesn't happen in certain situations. A few of my favorite lyrics are, "They don't make loyalty like they used to," and "This empire belongs to me." Just really love that. Now, I will say, this is the first Taylor Swift with use of the D word. And when I first heard it, I was like, did Taylor Swift just say that? And I couldn't find the exact interview that she said this in, but I did see her talking at some point during this like recent press splits that she did about when and why she started adding more like swear words, curse words. I don't know why I just said swear words. Like I live in the 1800s. Curse words like into her songs. And she basically justified it by saying like, if it improves the intensity of the moment, there are certain lyrics that just like bounce more or like hit better in songs. And I think that in a case like this, where this is like, you know, a song with a lot of heat behind it, is trying to like prove a point. And it is definitely, the Popcast pointed this out, like it is kind of a more subtle and mature interpretation, sorry, of the man from, what album is that? Lover? Yeah, Lover. And I totally agree. Like, I like this way more than I like The Man, even though I appreciate the message of The Man just as much as I appreciate the message of this. I just think it's like a very, very strong song for her as a songwriter, for sure. And there's also a really satisfying key change in it. Okay, Eldest Daughter. I feel like this one was very split amongst people online, and I can kind of see why. I feel like there is some kind of obvious digs here in a sense. Like everybody's so punk on the internet. Every single hot take is cold as ice. Apathy is hot. There's a lot of kind of pointing out the obvious in some ways. But I don't know. I do feel like this ties into the showgirl kind of backstory that I was expecting from the album as a whole when I first went into it. I think some people are not liking when she uses internet slang in songs, and I can understand why it is a little bit cringe in a sense. People, especially, I don't think liked when she said, "I'm not a bad bitch, this isn't savage," which for some reason to me, I just went immediately like, all the way back to Fearless, "I'm Not a Princess, This Ain't a Fairy Tale" on White Horse, which is also the track 5 of that album. I mean, for me, again, in some ways, like, what is this song really saying? Like, what's the big takeaway from it? In some ways, I do see how it can be pointing out the obvious. I actually think my favorite part of this song is the bridge, though. "We lie back, a beautiful, beautiful time lapse. Ferris wheels, kisses, and lilacs, and things I said were dumb. Because I thought that I'd never find that beautiful, beautiful life that shimmers that innocent light back like when we were young." I think that is a very, like, poignant look back on what your expectations of love were and how they aren't always met in the real world, but every once in a while when you're with the right person, you really can get glimpses of that back, and you can look back on things with nostalgia and with a lot more perspective than you probably originally had in the moment, and can acknowledge that you can build a beautiful life for yourself even if it doesn't seem like something you originally thought was possible. Like, I really like this message of hope in this song that is otherwise talking about how mean people can be online, you know? So maybe there's a bit of a disconnect in like the dichotomy of the writing here, but I really do love the bridge. Oh my God. Okay. Ruin the Friendship. First time I listened to this song, I completely missed the end. So I was like, oh, okay. I kind of like this. Yeah. Oh, there's Abigail. Yeah. Yeah. My God, saddest plot twist though. So this song is basically about a high school crush of Taylor's. The internet has basically like all but figured out who this is, and even the person's mother has since like commented on the track and said it's great that Taylor's like keeping his name alive and his memory alive. Essentially, this is a high school friend of Taylor's who passed away when he was 21, and the song is really about just, I mean, the one line from the song, she says, "My advice is always answer the question, better that than to ask it all your life." Like, if you have an impulse that you want to act on, if you have a feeling that you feel strongly about, to speak about it, like to, speak now in a sense, say something, do something, or live with the regret. And those are kind of like the two paths in front of you. And in this case, because this person is no longer here, she is always going to have the question, she's always going to have the wonder. I mean, the third verse is like maybe one of the saddest plot twists in a song of all time. And I feel like the refrain of like, should have kissed you anyway, just like continues to echo throughout the song. I saw some people say like, oh, he had a girlfriend, like she shouldn't have done that. And I really don't think that is the point of the song. I think, if anything, people missing the point a little bit there. It's really just more about like talking about how you feel and making sure that you say things to people you care about while they're here so that you don't have lingering regret of not saying something when they're not here. I mean, my main thing about this song is I don't totally get where it fits in on this album. Again, like eldest daughter to me sort of answers the like showgirl backstory question of like what's the kind of tragic past, or like what about the past made you who you are today? What was it back then that influenced how you are now? Like we kind of already just got that in track 5. This literally did feel like a Fearless vault track, and a lot of people are also comparing it to Forever Winter. That's actually a Red vault track, but is believed to be about the same person. And so I just, again, like it really did feel like suddenly it was 2010 or something. So I feel like my main gripe with the song is I don't really see it on this album. That's just one Swiftie's opinion. You are allowed to disagree with me. Okay, let's move on to Actually Romantic. I need a sip of coffee for this one. Okay, this is a diss track, which, again, I feel like we have nudges and nods to disses throughout this album that are a lot more subtle. To have a whole diss track on this album again is an interesting choice. It's the same way I felt about Thank You, Amy. It's like, isn't it a little past the point for this? Now, I guess there's a little bit of debate about who this is actually about. Most of the internet seems to believe that the lyrics are kind of a reference to Charli XCX and her song Sympathy as a Knife. Sonically, some people are saying, though, it sounds like Olivia Rodrigo, and it's maybe like a slight there, something, I don't know, happened with the songwriting credits on Olivia's album. The Popcast host said that there was maybe like another timeline or world where Olivia was actually an opener on the Eras tour, because they kind of had a, protege mentor relationship for a little bit there, but then Sabrina really became more of who Taylor was focused on. So whoever it's about, how is it just as a song? Let's talk about that, because I don't know enough about the lore and the beef between all of these people offline to really comment on it. I mean, sonically, I like it better than Thank You, Amy, but I do not think it is a stronger diss track than Bad Blood or The Smallest Man Who Ever Lived, which are like two completely opposite sounding songs, but drive home a similar point. It was kind of giving like Katie Heron from Mean Girls saying, God, it's not my fault you're like in love with me or something. I feel like that would actually be funny. I haven't really seen a Mean Girls edit of this song yet. I think my favorite edit of this song, and one of the best parts again about this, has been talking to other people about this album and also seeing like what comes up with this album on the TikToks of the world. And one of my favorite compilations so far was them stitching this together with like Dean and Jess from Gilmore Girls. And the scenes where they're like about to fight each other and they're like circling and they're kind of close, and then it's like it's actually romantic. It's like you're not wrong about that. So I'm enjoying, like, I think that the discussions around this topic, like there's a lot more there than for me, like in the song itself. I don't know. Maybe some people love Actually Romantic. Okay, let's talk about Wishlist. Going back to her putting narcotics in her songs, this one is like incapable of escaping my brain. All I do all day is walk around and be like, bust up, settle down, got a wish list. I just want you. I don't even know all of the lyrics in this one. Also, another really, really like smart and clever key change that I love in the second verse. Just like one of the catchiest backbeats. This one almost feels a little bit like rap, just in the sense that musically there's not too much going on. It's pretty simple and the lyrics are really the standout here, but I like when Taylor does that every once in a while. I haven't really heard her do it since what, Endgame, maybe? I don't even know. Lyrically, it felt like it could have been on Lover. But again, I feel like when Taylor is in her Lover Girl era, which the two main albums that would come to mind for me are this and Lover, I don't know. I'm ending up with a little bit more substance or refinement or something from The Life of a Showgirl. Also, just put a little bit more stock into what she says in The Life of a Showgirl because her relationship with Joe Alwyn ended. And the one she's in now is the one she's in with Travis Kelce. And they are not just in a relationship, they're engaged. Like, I have to put more stock in that and in her writing and her expressions in this album, personally. I think I was a little surprised to see her use dollar signs in the title, but other than that, I mean, definitely a catchy song and one that really is just like, I'm happy and in love. And it's okay for Taylor to have that. I mean, going forward, she is literally getting married now. Like, we're not really going to get breakup songs in the future like Dear John anymore, but maybe we're going to get more songs like Father Figure, where it's more about like her career or her fans or her relationship with other collaborators. There's a lot of room for subtlety and emotions that are not just tied to your romantic relationships. And I think people forget that and they underestimate Taylor Swift's songwriting capabilities in that sense. Like, just because she's not in a fight with her boyfriend doesn't mean that she's not going to continue to make great music. All right, let's talk about Wood. She oh god, I knew I was going to have a problem with this one. Okay, Taylor went on Jimmy Fallon and Jimmy Fallon asked her about Wood, and he said, you got to tell me about this song, which by the way is one of the shorter ones. I think it's like a 2-minute 30-second song, so not even like that much to work with here, but plenty to say about it. She said that it started from an innocent place. She had an idea to write a song about superstitions, which we hear a lot of in the first like 2 verses, I would say. Plucking daisy leaves to say he loves me not. She references lucky pennies, stepping on a crack, the black cat laughed. She talks about fingers crossed. I like the concept of this, especially like in the context of the Life of a Showgirl album. And then in the Fallon interview, she says at the end, like, I'm not totally sure how we ended up here. And I have to agree. I'm not totally sure how we ended up here either. And I'm not totally sure if the second half of this song is a place that I personally needed to hear or that the whole world needed to hear. And again, I think there's something to be said for Taylor letting everyone know that she's doing just fine. But I'm going to be honest, and I don't know if this makes me prude or whatever, but like this song was a lot for me personally. And in my reaction vlog, which like I told you guys, I'll link it in the show notes, the only like real thing that I said right after listening to it was like, is this Taylor Swift's disco stick? When she said magic wand, I was just like, oh, disco stick. We're all saying the same thing. We all know what we're talking about here. I don't know. Okay, let's just move on. Canceled. An all capital letters song with an explanation point. I was like, oh, okay, we're going to be shouting here. And I was kind of right. And this is another, again, kind of like internet commentary. She says it's easy to love you when you're popular. the refrain here, good thing I like my friends canceled. I like them cloaked in Gucci and in Scandal. I mean, my first thought was Blake Lively, and maybe the fact that even though she's been somewhat dragged into this lawsuit happening with Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni about the Colleen Hoover film they worked on together, maybe she doesn't care. I couldn't tell if this was her saying like, no, I stand behind like Blake, or I stand behind who else is controversial, who she's aligned herself with. I don't know, Brittany Mahomes. I really don't know. Lots of like mysterious and dark melodies. Again, like I don't know what the Reputation Vault tracks are. It seems like we may get them at some point, but like it almost felt a little bit like that. I did like a few lyrics in here. Soon you'll learn the art of never getting caught. Just, thinking about like she's been around long enough where she has earned the right to be able to break rules, I think is what that means. That to me feels very showgirl coded. And then there are some lines in here like a shattered glass is a lot more sharp, where I'm like, yes, again, it's a little bit kind of pointing out the obvious. And I know she has more, songwriter prowess than that. So I don't know. That one's interesting. Okay, let's chat, honey. This is a happy song. This is a song for the glass half full kind of girls, I think. And it is another way where you look at a word that maybe used to kind of have a negative connotation to you, but you're able to reclaim it or put your own spin on it to turn it into something positive. She says, when anyone called me sweetheart, it was passive aggressive at the bar, and how that turns around. She says, you can call me honey if you want because I'm the one you want. And I also like, again, the little flips in here, like be my forever nightstand. Like we're just swapping one word here, but the implication suddenly is so different and so much more solid and future looking. And I was surprised that there was a lot of looking back on the past in this album. I definitely feel like there was a good amount of present, a lot of looking back on the past, especially like with Father Figure and Canceled and Actually Romantic and Ruin the Friendship. And then here, and I think with like Opalite too, we're getting glimpses into the future. I'm kind of surprised Honey, I think right now has the fewest plays on Spotify for this album. I'm surprised by that. I also love the little bit of like jazzy brass, I don't know which instrument exactly it is, that comes in like after the second chorus. It does feel like we're just like sinking into a warm little pot of honey. Who knew I'd be talking about honey so much on this podcast episode? Because I also was talking about the honey pot before. I'm allergic to honey, by the way. This is a fun fact about me that I guess is not that fun. And I've never gotten the blood test because I don't want to do that. But yeah, so I just avoid honey. But I've had an allergic reaction to honey before, so that's why I'm convinced that's what it is. Okay, moving on. Last track on the album, Life of a Showgirl featuring Sabrina Carpenter. I actually really I listened to the song for the first time and I was like, oh, I really like this. This is a little glimpse at like Broadway Taylor, who I feel like there's more of her in there somewhere. I feel like that is kind of the cringe and like the theater kid energy, which again, I did theater growing up. Like I was thinking about this Broadway-esque bridge in this song and thinking how like Leah Michele would have just absolutely crushed this if it was in a Glee episode. She basically, I mean, this obviously is the most on theme for this album because it's the title track. Talking about Kitty, a showgirl, kind of also telling it from the perspective of a fan and then telling it from the perspective of someone who actually has been through all of that, jumped through hoops, trained for things, and gotten to where they are, overcoming obstacles. That again feels very true to like Father Figure and The Fate of Ophelia and like some of the other tracks in this song. Again, like in the bridge, all the headshots on the wall of the dance hall or of the bitches who wish I'd hurry up and die, but I'm immortal now, baby dolls. I couldn't if I tried. I feel like that is an allusion to her really solidifying her place in the music industry. I like that she said, I'm not going anywhere. Some people were originally speculating she might like take time off after this album to just like chill and be a person and be married. But she seems to not show any signs of slowing down, which obviously as a music fan, I love. And also like as a creative person, I understand. Even when things are crazy and hectic, it's hard to stop making art when that's like what you love and what makes you happy. And I love how they looped in the Eras Tour closing night audio at the end, especially because Sabrina was her last guest at that last night in Vancouver. What a great closeout to the album for me. Like the Alpha and Omega tracks on this album, like The Fate of Ophelia and then this, I love that arc and I love those two grounding points on either side. Okay, really quickly, I tried to write down all the colors that were mentioned in this album because I feel like sometimes those have significance. So in Elizabeth Taylor, we got violet and white in reference to diamonds. In Opalite, we got the opalite and onyx contrast. In Father Figure, we got brown in reference to I drink that brown liquor, and mahogany. I didn't know if that was, I consider that a color, so I just wrote it down. Both are brown, so we're in the same color family there. She used gray in reference to the overpass and ruin the friendship. She used black in reference to the cat and wood. Two colors in Honey, white teeth and pink skies. Surprised we didn't get like a golden reference in Honey, although I guess we do get one in Daylight. And then peach in Life of a Showgirl, but maybe that's a loose one. It was used as a noun, so maybe not. Okay, I also had to write down 3 songs that sound extremely similar to songs that already exist. I mean, the indie rock people of the internet found that the opening to Actually Romantic is extremely similar to a song called Where Is My Mind by the Pixies. I did not know this band. I definitely wouldn't have picked up on that had I not seen other people talk about it. I mean, the opening of Wood, everyone knows I Want You Back by the Jackson 5. Like, if you don't know the Pixies, you know I Want You Back. So I was kind of surprised by that one. And then you want to know who told me that The Life of a Showgirl sounded like Cool by the Jonas Brothers before I saw it anywhere else on the internet? My own husband. Truly, that thought did not cross my brain, but as soon as he said it, I couldn't unhear it. And I'm confused by this fully because there are so many songs on here, like The Fate of Ophelia and Father Figure and Wish List, that feel new and feel like Taylor. And I'm so confused as to what this dipping into the pool of other artists is about on this one, especially when working with someone like Max Martin. I don't know. And there have been a couple of artists lately who have done even more direct pulls and kind of created like remixes or updated versions of other artists' songs. But, I'm thinking of like Shabuzi, Tipsy, like Everybody in the Bar Getting Tipsy, but done in a totally country way. And then I'm thinking of Doechii doing Anxiety and having that overlaid with the Somebody That I Used to Know by Gautier. Is that what it is? I don't know. Those feel more deliberate and like you obviously need to credit the first artist. These feel like weirdly lifted, which I don't understand for Taylor at this point, like in her career. I don't know. I just like those really kind of threw me for a loop on this album. Other overall thoughts, just to go through a few quick bullet points and then we'll get into the song rankings and the album rankings. First 4 tracks, I love how they like all go together. It's the same way that I feel about the first 4 tracks of Evermore, how I will just always listen to those 4 straight through. Definitely more euphemisms, sex allusions, and also just straight up references in this album than any other before. This is definitely the most like PG-13 album in that way. I do really love the aesthetics of this album. Like, I love the cover. I love all the vinyl covers. I love the Fate of Ophelia music video. Never in my life would have put orange and green together, but now I love that. And yeah, I am distracted by how well some songs really seem to fit in with this theme and what I was expecting, and how others just felt like these are vault tracks from other albums. I know I kind of already said this, but Ruin the Friendship felt like a Fearless vault track to me. Canceled felt like it could have come from Reputation. And then also, I actually am surprised that she put I Can Do It With a Broken Heart on the Tortured Poets department. I don't know if that was just to let fans know how she was doing that it went on that album, but it feels like it should be on this album, I think. But again, one Swiftie's opinion. Feel free to disagree. All right, so all of that being said, I'm just going to go through the list quickly because I feel like I explained myself on most of these tracks. So from bottom to top of my personal song rankings for me with Life of a Showgirl, I am going to put Wood at the bottom. Again, it's hard for me to listen to. And like, again, I don't know if that says more about me than it does about the song. I do think it's catchy and I do get like some of the little parts of it stuck in my head. But at the end of the day, that's just not my song. I also have Actually Romantic at number 11. I have Ruin the Friendship at number 10. Again, like, not because I don't like the song, but just in terms of fit, I don't totally get what it's doing on this album. Number 9, I put Canceled. Again, just, not the best, I wouldn't say. I have Eldest Daughter at number 8. Again, like, the bridge really is the standout for me in this one. And if the rest of the song was slightly different. I could have seen it ranked higher. Number 7, I have Elizabeth Taylor. Definitely catchy for me, and like I enjoy it. I'm not going to skip that song, but there were other songs that ranked higher for me. Number 6, I have Opalite. Number 5, I have Wishlist. Number 4, I actually have Honey. And again, I feel like that is a reflection of like where I'm at in my life right now. Number 3, I have Father Figure. Number 2, I have Life of a Showgirl. And number 1, I have The Fate of Ophelia. I think that may be one of the best songs she's ever written. I just get so excited every time I hear it. Like I just want to dance to it. I truly, truly love that song, like from start to finish. The Life of a Showgirl, again, this is like, as a theater kid, my little glimpse into Taylor and Broadway. I'm sorry I didn't talk about Sabrina. I feel like I'm been talking for so long. I feel like she sounded great on this song. And then Father Figure, I really do think is like some of her best commentary and writing, not just on this album, but like overall, truly. Okay. So where does this fall in my album rankings? I'm going to quickly read you my album rankings before The Life of a Showgirl. If you don't want to hear this spoiled and you want to listen to me go through all the albums and rank them, I will put my rankings episode in the show notes. I would pause this episode and go listen to that first if you want. So from the bottom up, at number 11, I had Lover. Number 10, Debut. Number 9, Midnights. Number 8, Fearless. Number 7, Evermore. Number 6, Red. Number 5, The Tortured Poets Department. Number 4, 1989. Number 3, Reputation. Number 2, Folklore. And number 1, Speak Now. Now, I don't have time to explain that ranking in this episode. Again, I will put the rankings episode in the show notes if you want to listen to that next. So in terms of why everything is there, that's in that episode. In terms of how everything was there, what I ended up doing was wrote out every single track of every Taylor album, including vault tracks, and I ranked songs that I like, songs that are a sometimes listen, and songs that are a skip. And then I also chose my top 3 songs for each album. I made a Google Doc template of this because I had some friends ask me for it. So I'm also going to make that available for you guys in the show notes if you want to go in and actually go through every single song and say whether you like it, whether you sometimes listen to it, or whether it's a skip for you. Based on this, I added up how many points the album got. Each song that I liked got a point. Each song that was a sometimes listen got half a point. Each song that I skipped got no points. And I wrote out how many points it had and how many skips it had. And that was what helped me get the ranking that I have now. So, for example, Speak Now is at the top for me. That is because that is essentially a no skip album. I actually personally love Red as like an era. I love the aesthetics of it. And I have a few true standout songs from that album that are some of my all-time favorites. However, there are also a lot of skips on that album, which I didn't really realize until I sat down and went through this whole list to get to that conclusion. So that's why Red is not in my top 3. That's why it ranks in the middle. So this was kind of the objective way to do it, because if I had all subjectivity and no system, we would be here for 6 weeks. So all of that being said, my new ranking with The Life of a Showgirl. So now we're ranking out of 12. At number 12, I still have Lover. This did not change for me. If anything, I think The Life of a Showgirl is a better execution of the concepts of Lover. Number 11, I have Debut. Number 10, I have Midnights. The Life of a Showgirl is number 9 for me. And again, that doesn't mean that I'm not enjoying this current era of Taylor Swift. I really love a lot of the songs on this album. Also, I should add that the ranking sometimes gets a little skewed just because there's more to work with on some other albums. Like the Tortured Poets Department, there's 31 songs compared to The Life of a Showgirl, there's 12. So if I don't like a song on The Life of a Showgirl, that weighs more heavily for me than if I don't like a song on the Tortured Poets Department. It wasn't that inconsequential. Did that make sense? It wasn't that consequential, I should say. I should listen to the Tortured Poets Department again. I feel like it'll improve my vocabulary. So then now Fearless is number 8, Evermore is number 7, Red is number 6, TTPD number 5, 1989 number 4, Reputation number 3, Folklore number 2, Speak Now number 1. So that sums up my song and album rankings for The Life of a Showgirl. Thank you guys for sitting with me through this episode. Let me know if you go through the Google Doc and actually do your rankings as well. I would love to hear what they are. And if you're watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify, leave a comment and let me know if you would like me to do an episode with my top 25 Taylor Swift songs of all time, because I think that one would be really fun to put together. I would space it out from this episode. Obviously, I would need some time to think about that. But if it's of interest, let me know, and I will have all my other Taylor episodes linked in the show notes.